in fact, the use of the central bank balance sheets was used to pay the interest on the debt from the previous cycle. And this will become relevant in a second. So they're monetizing the interest payments, which is pure debasement of currency. And debasement of currency means that the denominator, the purchasing power of that currency, goes down, and it makes the price of assets look like they're going up. But they're not really going up. When you divide, for example, the S&P 500 or gold or real estate by the Fed balance sheet, they've been flat since 2008. And I discovered within that process that only two assets actually have risen versus the debasement of currency. That was technology stocks and crypto. Both were in secular uptrends. So this, like clockwork business cycle, which is based around the debt refi cycle, happens to be exactly the same as the US election cycle. It also happens to be exactly the same as the Bitcoin halving cycle. So all of these cycles are at the same time every time. So here we are today. Today, we're at the bottom of the business cycle. This is the kind of recessionary era. Businesses are laying off staff. Inflation is starting to fall sharply. Inflation keeps falling. I think it'll overshoot to the downside, which is the opposite of everybody else's narrative of sticky inflation. And I think the markets are already showing you how excited they are about this idea, because we've just gone through a ridiculous rate cycle, kind of an unprecedented rate cycle on the back of the unprecedented inflation. That inflation, I think, was just driven by the pandemic. If you shut down, all demand and shut down all supply and then bring it all back on at the same point, you create chaos. Exactly the same happened after World War II. After World War II, suddenly everyone came back into the labor force, and factories had to retool from making munitions to making cars and washing machines and whatever. And we got a massive inflation then. But then what happened is it worked its way through, and we just had strong growth going forward. So that's where we are today. Go on.
Oh, no. You can continue.
So we've still got the problem remaining of that GDP formula. How do we pay for this bloody debt? Because it keeps going up. The higher interest rates go, the more bonds they have to issue, which is why I think they want to bring interest rates much lower than people expect. But if you change to a new source of energy or bring in other sources of energy to make an excess abundance of energy, and you bring it down to $10, that has a massive multiplier. So my big picture is we're about to go through an economic revolution, but we're not finished with the downside of slow economies. And that's going to mean more and more use of the balance sheets, ongoing increase in asset prices, and this ongoing cyclicality of the economy. So the answer is I don't know. I think we've had a rolling recession through different parts of the economy at different times. Truck drivers, huge recession. Car companies, big recession. There's a bunch of indicators that show that. The tech companies, don't forget, they laid off all of their staff beginning of the year, and continuing claims are rising again. So somebody else is laying off workers now. It's actually driven by two things: wage increases and owner equivalent rents, both of which are going down, are deflating. And all the forward-looking indicators suggest that they are likely to go negative. So I think there is a chance even of core inflation going negative in 2024, which is very much the opposite of what anybody else's view is. Most people, I think there's myself and Alex Gurovich are the only two people who've got this view. Almost everybody else thinks we're going to see sticky inflation. I just don't think we will.
Well, speaking of that, if and you talk about you and Alex Gurovich have that view and others have the sticky inflation, you've been doing macro for a long time, several decades. So I guess my other question to you is, what kind of, do you see like false narratives out there in the macro space? Any that stand out to you?
There's a lot of false narratives in macro, and a lot of it's based on politics. People put their political views into their economic views and then create market views around them. So there's a general desire for a recession and markets to fall. And that's driven by people who are really all about how is inflation created? The central banks have destroyed our world, and I want to show everybody that it's happened. Yes, the central banks have destroyed our world, but not in the ways that they think. We've had the use of the balance sheet for over a decade now, and in Japan even longer. It never generated inflation. But they want that inflation because they want to prove that the monetarism, and that's why crypto has resonated so well for people, because they can see a way out. But it's hard because it's very volatile too. But that's why it's kind of gripped the younger people, as have technology stocks. That's why people love Tesla. It might produce amazing cars, but it also has produced amazing performance for people. And people need that because there's no other way, because it's not going to be made up with wages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I hope my Bitcoin can help me with my down payment. We were talking at the top of this conversation when you were outlining your macro view, and a key part of that is the debt problem. And I understand that digital assets are, one of those solutions, way out of the debt problem. Maybe to step back, can we frame up the debt problem, the severity of it, and then let's start to explore some of the ways out of the debt problem?
So the debt problem is really interesting. 2008, every major government in the world of a developed economy hit 100% of GDP in debt. So, okay, and interest rates, let's say 5-year interest rates where they generally finance themselves, have averaged around 2% or less. Understanding both the exponential age and the everything code that came later. It was like a veil had been lifted from my eyes. Macro guys generally tended to be mean reversion guys. They look for something to get excessive, then they want to, bet against it. And they see the world like this, like the business cycle. And none of us could understand technology and why it kept going up. We kind of could understand crypto because it's like this macro phenomena of, a whole different financial system, parallel financial system, getting adoption, etc. But technology, none of us got, apart from the few. And when I started dividing everything by the central bank balance sheets to take account debasement, I saw that technology was one of the things that just kept rising. And that led me to dig into this whole process. And that completely changed my framework of the world. I wasn't looking for the blow up now. I was looking for the melt up. And, crypto markets had taught me to use these logarithmic charts of these trends